Cool. Well, thank you again, Ed, for joining me today. I've always so enjoyed kind of brainstorming with you and hearing your insights and shared experiences, and you are just you're a wealth of knowledge and experience, and you're very generous with that as well. So I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. Yeah. So I know you, Ed Zeman, owner of Zeman Homes. Can you give us a bit of a background or just like a bio on you?
Sure. I'm the chairman of Zeman Homes and Neighborhoods and RV Parks. So we own RV parks and mobile home parks across the country, mainly on the eastern half. Illinois, Florida are big locations. And so we have two pretty distinct businesses. One is the traditional mobile home parks, which is what we started on, and then we branched out into the RV business. And so we're always looking to do startups. So I consider myself an entrepreneur at heart, even though we kind of outgrew the entrepreneur stage. We're always looking to grow and do new, exciting, cutting edge things. So we've never really lost sight of that, even though we do have the traditional 38-year-old business. So
that's cool. I often find myself curious how folks like yourself and other very successful people kind of stay motivated, because obviously you, if you wanted to, you wouldn't have to probably work another day in your life, but you continue to strive for better, bigger, more fun, more exciting things. Can you kind of share the mindset, like what keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I think the simple word for that is passion.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of again, these are just my experiences that I'm big at telling you, Chris, about shared experiences. So I never like to tell anybody what to do, because, and I say, don't do what I say. Take what you like, what I say, and throw the rest of the way. So it's just sort of a background thing. And I know Quentin was big on saying that too. So
yeah,
sort of my experience is passion. And when you find what you really, really, really enjoy, it's not work. So when I have these new business ventures and new experimentations and new creative things, and I'm messing around on the computer Saturday night, well, why are you working on Saturday night at 8 o'clock at night? Well, it's not really work. It's fun. It's passionate. It gives me energy versus having to go to a factory and make widgets, which is just something that I couldn't do Saturday night at 8 o'clock. So I think for me, passion is the number one thing that keeps me driven, and all those things that come along, the success, the wins and the losses, and we tend to take some risks, and frankly have had a lot of losses, and that's okay. So we don't like to lose, but we know it's part of the process of losing to continue to move forward and eventually be a success. So that is kind of a simple answer, is passion. And having that, and again, I'm kind of a believer, you either have it or you don't, and sometimes people lose it at a certain age or certain stages in life, and I get that, but that's just for me, and luckily, knock on wood, I haven't lost that passion yet, so hopefully I never will, because I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's why you and I kind of see eye to eye and get along so well. Like we're both very passionate people, and I also work basically every day, not necessarily because I have to, but because the growth, the evolution, the improvements in my company, they're fun, they're exciting. They give me, like you said, they give me energy rather than take it away. Have you ever had periods where the passion was kind of lacking or missing, or you needed to force
absolutely
yourself?
It's funny you mentioned that, because as soon as you had it, these words are just coming to me today. And it's not really so much the external factors, like COVID and those things that I can't control, or a snowstorm or 9/11 or the financial crisis. To me, what really drains me is having teammates that don't live up to the core values and our passion and don't match that. That really, really drains me. And it really, really taught me some hard lessons that I better get alignment around passion, and I better get alignment around core values, because that's one thing that'll make you real miserable real quick when somebody's in your foxhole that doesn't share those core values or share that passion. Because when the times get tough, and eventually they will, no matter what, you need to have that person in your foxhole or people in the foxhole that are going to be with you when the bullets start flying. So that really, in my experience, has really driven me nuts and really drug it out of me. And then it's amazing once you remove that person or those people from that situation, man, you just feel so much better. And as brutal and as harsh as that sounds, that's one thing that's really jumped out at me.
Yeah. Well, that's my knee-jerk next question is how do you kind of realize that someone is not a good culture fit, and how do you, well, I guess it's a three-part question. How do you realize they're not a good fit? How do you get rid of them? And how do you minimize the chance of hiring someone like that in the future?
Those are great questions. Another reason why I like you, Chris, because you're always asking great questions. I think I may have told you the story. Years ago, we had a consultant, which I'm not a big believer in consultants, but we had one and said, "What are your core values?" I don't know. And our CEO at the time, D, we don't talk about that. Well, no, it's important that you understand what you're all about. So we went through the exercise and we got granular and took a lot of time and discussed, honesty as the number one core value. Respect for yourself and others is another huge core value. And devotion to the customer and to the team, another massive one. Ability to wow somebody's a big one, and then fun. So we know that in our core team, and Dee and I get along so well, or did get along so well, she's since retired and is vice chairman, we know that really worked for us. So anybody we brought in, certainly the senior level team, now there's certain guys that, cut the grass, for example, that may not have to be that close on the core values, but certainly your senior people, we just found without that core value match, it's just absolute suicide. I mean, you're going to make yourself miserable. And I could tell a ton of stories, but we had this phenomenally talented gentleman who was just a wizard, but the core values, mainly honesty and respect, weren't there. Mm. We really struggled for a long time. Man, this guy's so good and so talented and brings so much to the table and quote unquote makes us so much money that it was so hard when you have that superstar to get rid of. But eventually it got so bad, and I was talking about losing passion, it was so miserable that we had to go, all right, this is it. I've talked to you many times. So we go back and we say, all right, here are our core values upon hiring. And of course, somebody's going to say, oh yeah, I'm honest. Oh yeah, I'm respectful. Oh yeah, I'm this. Oh yeah, I'm that. That's great. So people can tell that lip service, but then you get granular on the interview process. Well, what does that mean to you? And cite certain examples. So that's helped us out. And taking slow to hire, quick to fire. Obviously, that's like sort of an old cliche, but that's a big one. And that, even still, you do all those things and they look well and they still don't work out. So I would say, gut, I'm a big analytics guy and looking at facts and looking at numbers, et cetera. But also, when you walk into a room and you sort of get that gut, I don't know if I want to be with this person. I got to have a meeting with that person, versus the senior people on my team. Boy, I look forward to taking their phone calls Saturday morning or Sunday evening or whatever. Now, I know if they call me on Sunday evening, it's a problem, but meaning I know that these people are smart and we're aligned. And if they call me, there's a real issue. And I literally enjoy talking to them. And I think that's one of those gut things. Now, when you go into a room and I just don't want to be around this person. And so that's a big one. And as far as how to sort of vet that, we've done it a number of different ways. Obviously, the interviews are great, but we did it. We've done it a couple times recently where we have an actual real world problem. And we say, okay, here's our real world situation. We want you to come on in here and we want you to, here's the story. Here's the background, and this is what we're going to talk about when we come and meet with the senior team. and we're going to talk about how we're going to solve this problem. And a couple things happen. Either they come in cold, didn't do any research and didn't really read it, or kind of didn't pay attention, or they come in and they were fully prepared, but then they fully prepared and they somehow just don't click with your team, or they come in, they're fully prepared and they tend to align. And after a couple hour meeting with them, you go, wow, this person, you look around the room, do you want this guy in your foxhole? Do you guys want this guy in your platoon? And again, that only goes so far at a 2-hour meeting, but it certainly can flush out some things. Man, I was there and this guy, used some language or did something that just didn't jive with me or didn't feel right. So those are just a few things, again, depending on your situation and depending where you're at and what this person is some, maybe pick up a few of those tips that have worked for us in the past.
Yeah, that's awesome. I obviously, don't have a tenth of the experience, hiring, firing, working with high-level people, mid-level people. But I have dated a lot of women, and I, when I'm hiring someone or considering dating someone, to me it's the same exact muscle. I don't, there's not. I listen to my gut. I kind of, if I'm going to hire someone who I'm in close proximity to, like I'm going to take them to lunch or to dinner and just see how they kind of interact with people that they perceive like beneath them, like, the server. If they're rude to the server or say something mean to the hostess or whatever, I'm like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. Same with dating. So yeah, those are great insights there. So before we dive into the specifics of what I wanted to talk about during our session today, in addition to passion, you are a family man. You have how many? You have 4 kids?
Yes.
4 kids. I'm a very passionate entrepreneur. I'm a very passionate creative as well. Like I write and direct movies in my spare time. And I've noticed kind of a through line with all the people that I look up to that I, kind of model myself after. And they, in order to sustain kind of long-term success, they have to spend almost as much time maintaining their family as maintaining their business or creative pursuits. So, I've met one of your sons at Gary Rabine's tailgate last year or 2 years ago, since 2021. How do you balance it all? How do you keep up with your family as much as you keep up with your business?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I say, when you're serious about something, you make time. And whether that's business or whether that's exercise or whether that's your family, I don't particularly like excuses for myself. It's, hey, it's on the calendar and I do it. I knew today I had a commitment to you because you're my friend. At 2:00, I'm going to be there. Now, unless there was some extreme emergency, I very rarely miss a meeting. So when my son has a cross-country meet, or it's on the calendar, and I say no. It's learning to say no as well. And you know what? Sorry, Chris, I can't do it Tuesday at 2, but I can do it Wednesday at 2. And learning to say no is a big one. And learning to say no to that cookie is the big one too, if you're talking about weight loss. And it's discipline. And it's being very disciplined about, all right, well, my kids, I have them this weekend and I'm going to, go mini golfing. I'm going to do these things and we're going to do this. And that's on the calendar. And it sounds a little bit, I don't know, maybe cold, if you will, to put your kids on a calendar. But unless you're putting them on a calendar, other things take up your time. And if I have a meeting today at Chris, I have a hard stop at 3. I'm very sorry, Chris, I have another commitment at 3:00. And my commitment to my kids is just as important as my commitment to you as it is to, not eating those 10 cookies. So it sounds overly simplified, but that's just a matter of being disciplined. And I know I don't want to, knock anybody that doesn't do that, but that's just what works for me.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. And I definitely want to respect your time. Are you in Florida right now? Sounds like
I am. And by the way, I don't have a hard stop at 3.
Oh,
Just so you know, I can go as long as you'd like. I actually have a sick kid right now upstairs. He's been sleeping all day. Hopefully he doesn't have corona, but he doesn't have a fever, but he's been sleeping. So everything's fine. I don't have a hard stop.
Okay. I hear vitamin D is like the best thing if they have corona, or to kind of minimize the bad outcomes.
Yeah, I hear all sorts of things, and I have a cousin that's a doctor, and oh boy, I don't know what to believe anymore, Chris.
Yeah,
I had it. I don't know if I told you that.
Oh, you did?
Did I tell you I had it?
No.
In July, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's weird because for me, and again, everybody's different. I know a guy that's an overweight smoker who's in his early 60s, was asymptomatic. I know another friend of a friend who's a young 40-year-old guy that almost died. So it's just bizarre. And my symptoms were 2 days, and I thought it was food poisoning, and then I was fine. So everybody, it's just crazy because everybody's different. But the craziest thing, and I would not believe this unless it happened to me, is I still lost my sense of smell since July. And I know another guy.
Since July?
So I don't know. Somebody said it's blood type. Since July. Now I'm starting to get it back a little bit. Like if it's really pungent, like a pungent perfume or a smoky fire or a skunk or something, or somebody walks in an elevator with heavy cologne. Mm-hmm. But just random foods, I'm like, can't smell that, so, but I have no idea what that is. And it's starting to come back a little bit, but other than that, I'm fine.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're okay. Sucks to lose your sense of smell, but it'd be worse to lose your life.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay. I'm pretty sure it'll come back. I have confidence. So
yeah. Do you know Joe Langton?
He's a landscaper, right?
Yeah.
I think he does my mom's place. Does a lot.
Oh, no way! That's great.
He's got a brother. Is it John?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's Joe or John.
Yeah.
But my mother loves those guys.
Yeah. They're great. Joe, we produce Joe's podcast, but
okay.
Him and his daughter Julia just had it, and he had a really severe. He was in the hospital.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
But he's doing better now, so that's good.
That's good. Yeah, I have a friend that died, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
He went really quick too. Like within 2 days, he was dead. It was awful.
Holy.
Yeah, he was older and kind of had some health problems too. But
yeah,
it's crazy. So
I mean, that's the scariest part. Is like, if it was just consistent, it's like, all right, it will likely kill you if you're like over 70 and have diabetes. Then it's like, okay, that makes sense. But then you hear about like 40-year-olds that like almost died or died. Yeah. Crazy. So, all right, back to the topic at hand. So the kind of the big reason I wanted to talk to you is, we are really doing a lot of kind of sales, business growth. Like we're trying to take the next step with my podcast production company. We've spent probably the last 18 to 24 months kind of just like dialing in all the processes, getting all the right people in place, making sure that it works internally and externally. Like we're able to efficiently and effectively do everything internally, and then we're also getting good outcomes from our efforts. So we have that. I have about 9 people that do various jobs within the company. It's almost like I compare it to an assembly line. But instead of like cars or widgets, we're making podcasts. So, you know, we to find new clients, I'm doing a webinar every 2 weeks. It's just a free 20-minute webinar presentation that kind of like goes over why podcasting is effective, how it can help, and just why it's a great strategy for certain folks, certain people. Our kind of target market right now is successful entrepreneurs who, you know, have started successful businesses, and now they, you know, they're not working on or in the business as much, and they have lots of wisdom and like a pretty impressive Rolodex, and they want to have high-level conversations with other high-level folks, and then turn that into content to expand awareness of them, their company's brand name, and, you know, whatever mission they are most passionate about. So that's kind of like our first identified target market. So
I assume that's in Chicago, or is that all over the country, or?
So yeah, this is actually, thanks to COVID, all of our current clients are completely virtual. So, you know, they record the podcast via Zoom, and they talk to us via email, text, phone call, Zoom, whatever. So, you know, we're able to service anyone, anywhere, at basically any time. So that
and then do you size business or an age or a sort of a target demographic, or how do you sort of view your potential customers? Obviously, you're not going after IBM, you're not going after Johnny's Hot Dogs cart. So how do you kind of?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's basically anyone that can afford us. We find that, you know, large, small businesses and medium-sized businesses are kind of the easiest for us to get a hold of. And anything below like this sounds weird, but a large, small business typically just flat out can't afford us. So it's not worth our time.
Sure.
You know, our prices are, I would say, insanely reasonable. We recently were in talks with the co-founder of Netflix to do his podcast. And I think I pitched him on like $2,000 a month for 2 podcasts produced and marketed each month. And they were like, yeah, sounds great. And then I didn't hear from them for like 3 months. And they're like, hey, we've actually decided to work with the ex-marketing director of Spotify to produce our podcast. And they were, you know, I was like, yeah, whatever. I'd probably choose him over me as well. This guy has, you know, a ton of experience. He knows the Spotify algorithm, like, personally.
Sure.
But I was like, yo, you know, I spent a lot of time with you. Would you mind just kind of like sharing what he's charging you and what he's giving you? And they were like, yeah, he's charging us $50,000 for 12 episodes. And I was like, I would have charged you $12,000 for 12 episodes.
No.
So, you know, it's interesting, just to kind of hear that's a going rate that people are willing to pay. And, you know, I don't know if they're gonna last at that price point, even with a guy who, you know, used to work at Spotify. I think that's too much for the work.
Yeah, it's hard for me to comment on pricing on your space, except sometimes those guys are like, well, yeah, this guy's got a great resume, $50,000. I can't use Chris because he's just a one-off guy, and this guy's got a, you know what I mean? And the $50,000 is almost well, I'm going to pay 50 grand as opposed to 12. So it must be better because it's 50 grand. So, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's the mentality of quote unquote successful people. Well, he's got a big fancy office, so he must be successful. So again, I don't know some of that. You know, it just sort of strikes me as, I don't know if he was really your customer. He was the right, and I'm glad you took a shot at the guy, but you know, that's great. And I'm a big believer in trying to get a whale. And I'm glad you got the whale at least on the line as opposed to him hanging up. So I know I've talked to you about that before, about, you know, always having, you know, 1, 2, or 3 whales you go after, and that's awesome. But,
yeah.
So, pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that was, I try not to like take anything personally or like be like butthurt about it. I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you know, I learned a lot. Like I often I'm like, oh, it's $2,000, like too much. Like, am I charging way too much? And then I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
I hear you. That sometimes the no's are good to learn. And I think you did the right thing by asking the questions about why you didn't pick me. You know, I think that's great.
Yeah.
It's always good.
Well, I think over the years, I stopped taking it personally, or I tried hard not to take it personally. And I was like, yo, I shared thousands of dollars of information with you. Like, you know, give me some intel on my competition here. Awesome. So our plan right now is we're doing a bi-weekly webinar that you were kind enough to sit in on some of the early versions of, and you gave me some fantastic feedback, which, you know, if you ever see it again, you'll probably be like, oh wow, like I told him to do that. And I've gotten, you know, some really positive feedback, you know, just random people, because it's a recurring event on Eventbrite, so just random people can find it, and anywhere in the world, and I think kind of the way I've phrased it and the value proposition is very unique, so it does get people's attention. And then so we do the webinar in 30 minutes, and then at the end of the webinar, I say if you would like a free 30-minute one-on-one consultation with me to brainstorm everything your podcast can be, just fill out this questionnaire that asks them, you know, tons of info about their company, about their background, about their goals, about their, you know, revenue, employees, budget, just to try to get a grasp of if they can afford us or not. And we've so far done 3 webinars. I haven't promoted them super in-depthly. I've sent out some mass emails to our email list that has about 7,000 emails on it. And so far, one person has signed up for the consult. Given, you know, we started it in December, so, you know, most of our target customers, I think, are probably kind of off for most of the month of December. I would guess, are not super tuned in. They're more, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, whatever. So that it has not so far set the world on fire, but I think it's a good start. We're also kind of cold messaging prospects on LinkedIn. I'm actually inviting prospects to be interviewed on my podcast for the clients that we do produce their podcast. Like if one of the services that we offer them is to find them guests, you know, we'll often try to find guests that are great for their show and could also be potential clients for us, just so we have kind of their email, their direct contact info. They kind of see how it works. They like us. So I'm like the owner of the company, but I try not to work in the company. Like one of my contractors, interns. She's not an employee, but she's very kind of involved with a lot of things. She's basically like my outsourced CEO. She's just worked with me for about 3 years. She was my 18-year-old University of Chicago intern, who was just just a wonderkind, and she can do anything. She can do anything that I can do, and I'm like, hey, I don't have time to do this. Can you help me do this? She's like, yeah, no problem, and then just figures it out. And it's great. So she's actually leading the charge for sales because we have the assembly line kind of like self-sustained. So she's cold messaging people on LinkedIn, sending emails, sending LinkedIn messages, finding other people for me to interview on my podcast, finding other folks for our clients to interview for their podcast who might also be good clients. And so I don't know, what are your, I guess what's your knee-jerk reaction to this?
As far as how to find clients?
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me finish my thought. So right now our yearly revenue is around 150K, and we have a 50% profit margin. So my
and then 50%, or is it 50% before you pay yourself?
It's 50%, and then I pay myself, and I pay myself very, very little. Okay. I basically live like a monk.
Understood.
Yeah.
I know that I've been there, so I get it.
Yeah. Which is not so hard when there's literally nothing to do because of COVID. So, my goal is to, I would like to reach like a 7-figure revenue. Like, I think I said in our notes, go from 150K to 1.5 million in yearly revenue. And the kind of idea behind that is one, I would love to join YPO, and I think you have to have like 2 million in revenue and like a dozen employees or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is today, but
yeah. So that's part of it, and then the other part is, ideally I'd like to maintain the profit margin, and then use all the profits to fund like creative pursuits, like to fund film and television productions that I write, that I direct, that people I like write and direct, just to basically use the podcast company to create a film and television production company. I was just, it's kind of taken a page out of Elon Musk's book. Like he's the only person I know of that has done something similar to this. Like I'm sure other people have, but he created some sort of company that was like pre-GPS, pre-Google Maps, and he sold that for a couple million, and then he used that money to create PayPal, which he sold for a couple $100 million, and then, or maybe even $1 billion. And then he used that money to create SpaceX and Tesla, like the companies that he really wanted to make that, he would never have been able to get funding for. And so, I'm trying to do something on a far smaller scale than that, but still, the same kind of spirit. So, I have just mind vomited all. So yeah, I guess my ask for you is like, does that sound feasible? Am I kind of missing things? Like any kind of tips or insights to help me achieve those goals? I guess.
Yeah, one of the things you said early on, which I think you nailed, frankly, is the ability to scale. Because like a lot of businesses, they are the product, right? And I love the fact that you have these 9 individual factories, the term you use, which I think is a brilliant move to hopefully you can scale that. It sounds like you got your you know where you're going there, which is great. So then I go back and I say, okay, well, $1.5 million, how many, what's your average gross revenue per client, either per month or per year? How many clients do you need to get to $1.5 million?
I think we need 40 clients.
And how many you got now?
4.
Okay, so you need to 10x that.
Yeah.
So I would sort of look at it and go, okay, I need to 10 times that. Then I'm always the big believer in who are your 4 favorite or most profitable. Maybe of those 4, you don't like one and you're just dealing with it because you got the money. But what are your sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that you're like, man, I'm really jazzed about these guys and this is great. I want to get more people like this. I assume you've thought that through, as whether it's industries or individuals or ages or profile. Is there a commonality in that?
The folks that stay with us the longest are between $2,000 and $3,000 a month, and they are, even though they're in completely different industries, they're all entrepreneurs. They're all
So, I mean, obviously that gives you some insight there. So I guess trying to figure out what you're looking for. So, I'm a big believer too, even though it's hard to do, is to ask for the referral. Hey, Joe Langdon, you like me, right? Yeah. Do you know anybody else that would like me that I can really help out? And to keep asking for those referrals, and again, this is just my experience, something that happened in the last couple of days. You go on the internet and you go on Yelp or you go on Google reviews or whatever. I always go, wait a minute, they can manipulate that data. And I don't know Steve Smith that said this contractor is great. So what I've done, and even though I moved down here, I don't know anybody, I go on the app next door, right? And just because I feel that they're my neighbor, even though I don't know them, I say, who's a good painter? I need to remove the wallpaper in my kitchen and paint it. And I don't want to go to Google reviews or Yelp or whatever, or even Angie's List, because I know they're getting paid, but I figure Sally Smith across the street is gonna at least tell me what a good painter is. So word of mouth in the internet. I know SEOs are great and all those things are great to get your name, but I really would recommend that word of mouth. And if Joe Langdon calls me, man, Chris is doing a bang up job, or Gary Rabin or these guys, he's doing phenomenal for me. That is great. Now, sure, I can research rip-off reports, or I can research Angie's List, I can research some things, but starting with that personal, warm introduction to me in the age of internet is more important than ever. That's just my own personal thought, being an entrepreneur, and I think us entrepreneurs tend to be a little more, I don't know if I trust Google review. You get a little more skittish with that. So I think that's number one. I also think to keep asking the questions, hey, Joe Langdon, hey, what do you think about my services? What more could I add? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? I want to continue to grow, and ask them. Say, hey, Ed, just like you asked me, what am I doing? What can I do to grow more? What are some things you see that I do that I could do better, or whatever? And I think what came out of that, maybe even a long time ago, is, hey, try a free webinar. I don't know if that came from us or whoever it came from, but I'm sure it came out of somebody you trusted and somebody you liked that go, wow, that's a great idea. Let me take that. And the other thing I have is, don't be afraid to pivot off that. Don't be afraid to change that up or alter that or modify that. And I keep going back to looking for what's lacking out there in the market. What do people want? I mean, ask Joe, ask Ed, ask these guys, what do you want? I mean, what is marketing not doing for you that you need? And you'd be surprised at some of the feedback you get. And again, in our entrepreneurial end of the company with the startups, I went to, if I can go off on a tangent here a little bit, we feel there's a really, really need, a really, really huge demand for extremely high quality, transient, roadside RV parks. Because we look at the market, And there's nothing like that has been built. The old KOAs don't exist. So I went through personally, because I enjoy it, and I went through it with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reviews of RV parks. And I categorized them, and I did the data research myself, and it was fun. So I like doing this kind of stuff. And then I look what were the successful ones, and I broke it down into categories, and I say, okay, what's the best one, and how do I emulate that? So I guess the research and figuring out what the customer wants is a big, and then how can you give the customer, which also aligns with your passion. So that's some sort of rough ideas. And I think you're right on the right track in a lot of ways, Chris. And you know, I think you're moving it along. So keep chugging away at it, to keep asking people for referrals, to keep that. And again, if anybody ever, and again, for you to ask me, Ed, do you know anybody looking for a podcast? Now you can ask me once. And I'm like, yeah, if it comes up, but you know, I'm busy. I get other people, you know, maybe once in a while, hey, Ed, you just keep in mind, I'm the podcast guy. Oh, Chris is the podcast guy. Okay. And I just, and throughout my travels, hey, you know what? Go talk to Chris. But unless you're in front of my face nicely, and you're in front of Langdon's face nicely, and you're in front of Raybine's face nicely, hey, I'm kicking ass on my podcasting thing. Things are great. Ed, Joe, and Gary, if you know anybody that wants to do a podcast, because I can really help them out and really save them time and really make them a lot of money. So obviously there's a skill to that, because you don't want to email me 10 times a day asking me for referrals. But if you phrase it, hey, Ed, I'm doing great on this, and people love my product, and I got some testimonials. You know, anybody looking for a podcast, I'm your podcast guy. If it's okay, I'll touch base with you. And you ask them, how often can I touch base with you, Ed? Now, you know what? Once every 60 days. That way you got permission. Hey, you told me once every 60 days, I can tell you I'm so excited about my podcast, and I feel your passion. Man, Chris is really passionate about podcasting. Huh. Boy, the next time somebody on Nextdoor asks me about a podcast guy, I'm telling them to go to Chris. I'm exaggerating, of course, but that's keeping it fresh and keeping it in front of them. And, you know, that's, for whatever that's worth, that's just something that I see that people may not do a lot of.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. For whatever reason, I never asked for referrals. I think that's, I don't know, some sort of internal negative dialogue there. I feel awkward doing that, I guess. But
it is, and again, I go back to, it's a tough thing to do. Then it's like, geez, this is about business. But I think if you phrase it, and I think too, me, Gary, and I'm just using Joe because we're all similar but yet a little different. If you ask permission and say, hey, Ed, you know, I'd like to grow some podcasts. Please let me know if you know of anybody. Can I ask you this to keep me in fresh? That may be different than asking Gary Raybine that same question. Hey, you know, with the podcast, you know, I'd like to, you know, kind of keep in front of your face a little bit. Things are going great, but I don't want to bug you. How often can I get in front of your face? Whatever that is. Again, that, and if it's done that way, each people, and you got to keep track of these guys, and you know, so that to me would be solving people's problems. I keep going back to too, is what problem are you trying to solve for, you know, Ed or Gary or Joe? You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And to get granular with it. Hey, Gary says, oh, I want to get 10,000 people to listen to my podcast, or whatever the number is. Your job is to help him get 10,000, make his life easy. I always go back to people say, what should I do with my job? I say, make your boss's life easy. Think about making his life easy.
Yeah.
And think about not being a pain in his butt. Think about doing every little thing you can do to make his time. And most of that is time. You want to give back your quote unquote boss or your client's time. Hey, I saved you time and I made your life easy. Wow. Why do you think Uber's so successful? Because they save people time. You know, they make people's life easy. Uber's the damn easiest thing in the world, and they save me time. And Postmates and all these other companies that are now just think about it, time and making people's lives easy. So that, again, I don't know exactly how that parlays into what you're doing, but those are some things that I'm sort of seeing in the marketplace as what we're looking at too, is in my new RV business. How am I going to make my customer's life so easy that he loves me? And how am I going to save them time? What are the problems these people are facing? And I'm finding, luckily, I think it's low-hanging fruit. There's a ton of problems my customers are facing, a ton of them. And I feel like I'm on the right track and talking to a ton of people in the industry that these things don't exist. So that's again, just some of the insight to where the way I'm thinking about it. And then part of it is I told my team today, we're just going to do this. We're going to go out and try this. And it's probably not going to work right away. And we're going to fail and make some mistakes and do some stupid things, but we're going to fix them and move on. And that's something too, that it takes a lot of people, guts to have to say, it's okay to fail. I mean, let's not bet the house and lose millions of dollars, but we can make a calculated decision and then adjust along the way. So I'm also a big believer in that too. And I think it was, who was it? I forget if it was Steve Jobs that did that, or Bill Gates that would go ahead. We're just going to launch the product and fix the bugs. Risky, but
yeah.
That's to me is like, that's the hard charging mindset. Not being afraid to fail is a tough thing too.
Mm-hmm.
This feeling sucks.
Yeah. I call that ready, fire, aim.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would say that's what we're doing right now. Like we're just kind of throwing as much shit on the wall as possible to see what sticks. Is the webinar the way to go?
Sure.
Is having just doing a shit ton of podcast interviews with potential prospects to kind of get them to like us and become aware of us? Is our cold messages on LinkedIn, cold emails. There's not a lot of networking events right now to go to, so that's not a viable option. But we're just kind of throwing everything at the wall to see what we get traction with, and I've set it up. You were going to say something, I think.
No, I just had a thought. I think I had mentioned this in the email. One of the things that frustrates me the most about marketing, and I hate to lump you into marketing, but is you never know what is successful. And I can just tell you a quick story. I had a friend. I probably shouldn't mention his name, but I grew up with, known him since I was a kid. His father was a lawyer, and he was doing patent work. And this is back in the 70s. And nobody at that time was doing contingent fee patent work. It was all you had to write a check. Mm-hmm. And this guy went on his own and took it upon himself to do contingent fee work, and became one of the highest paid lawyers in the country because he hit some real home runs and took some people on that couldn't afford it, some inventors that couldn't afford a lawyer. So he said, give me 30% of what you make, and did some amazing things. So I always think, boy, what if a marketing company could say, I'm going to give you a base fee. Let me keep my lights on. But I'll tell you what, Gary Rabine, if I can get you to 10,000 views or whatever it is, will you pay me $1 million? Again, I'm just picking a number, or $100,000 or $300,000 if I get you to 10,000. So mm-hmm. I go back, keep my lights on, pay me a couple bucks. But if I get you what you want, you write me that check. What's it worth to you, Gary, to get you 100,000 downloads or whatever, or 100,000 listeners? Oh mm-hmm. man, that's worth $300,000. I'll tell you what, pay me $2,000 a month, or pay me $1,000 a month. So I'm barely keeping the lights on. I'm eating ramen noodles and whatever. But we're gonna be aligned. You get me that. I want $250,000. Or again, I don't know what that math is, but that would be something. Then I'm like, wow, Chris has got some guts. He's going to get me those likes. And what do I care if I pay the guy $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month? If I get to whatever my goal is, I'll write him a check for $250,000 without even thinking. Or again, whatever that stretch goal is, and maybe I don't know. I would love for somebody to come to me and said, if I'll get you 3,000 customers, how much you pay me? Shit, I don't do the math on that, but I'll pay you this. Well, mm-hmm. great. So again, that's just something outside the box that nobody's really done. And I don't know if you're interested in that, or if that even makes any sense at all. But now you're aligned. I go back to alignment with customers and alignment with your employees. And then you tell your young lady working for you, hey, this is my new product I want to launch. And she's excited because you give her a slice of the action. We're getting $200,000 from Gary Rabin, and I'm giving you 5%. Really? I can get a check for $10,000 if we do that? Heck yeah, I'm in. Or whatever that math comes out to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love that.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No, that's what I was hoping you would do. So Ed, if I was pitching you, I would say create a podcast that folks in RVs would love. That is just great stories of RV adventures over time, and it promotes all of your upscale RV parks around the country. So these folks are, they're passionate RVers, and they're always looking for a new adventure, a new path, a new drive, a new experience. And your podcast is letting them, or enlightening them to the new experiences they can have while they're driving, they're hearing new ideas, about new experiences. So that's what I'd say to you.
Yeah, no, and I understand, and that's interesting to me, Chris. The problem you have, in my experience, with Ed Zeman, I hear these words. This is what I talked to you about your podcast, and I love the way you really, really simplified those things for. I call it a guy like me who's a little bit older that doesn't really get. You did a phenomenal job with that, those basics. So I go back and I say, all right, that's great. Let's say you get me 10,000 listeners. What does that mean to me? What am I going to do with 10,000 listeners? How does that equate to dollars to the bottom line?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I am not ready to pull the trigger. I like conceptually where you're going, but as I think it through, I'm like, okay, is it name recognition as I want? Is it downloads? Is it that I want them to go, hey, I heard about your podcast from Chris Broadhead or RV Travel Podcast, and I want to stay here.
Yeah.
So again, I kind of struggle with and I only have one location, frankly, right now today that is my signature resort. The other ones so I'm still figuring out also who my customer is. I'm still ironing some kinks out of my business.
Yeah.
So, I'm not ready. So I guess I would turn around and go, okay, I have very simple questions with podcasts. Can you demographically tell who downloads your podcast?
On Spotify, you can.
But if they go to Apple or XYZ, I don't even know what I use, to be honest, with my podcast.
Yeah, the geographic analytics on iTunes are limited. I think it'll tell you what country.
Yeah, so then I'm like, all right, well, and then I go back further. Like, okay, let's say you had 1,000 downloads. Well, does that mean they listened to it? I think I have 4 or 5 downloads, or I clicked the button that I haven't fully listened to yet. Or I listen to some of them and I'm like, all right, well, this isn't turning me on, or I'm busy, or I got to go, or whatever. And then some of them I sit in my car and listen to because they're phenomenal. So yeah. I kind of just go, all right, let's say you had 1,000 downloads for my RV Travel Resorts. What does that mean? How do I tell that 1,000 was turned into dollars in my cash register? And that's sort of the disconnect I have for the questions I have for you.
So, my premise is based on the assumption that you have like a number of RV parks that you are promoting, that you want our RV enthusiasts to use. And the way that this, you would actually see the revenue is the RV enthusiasts are listening to the podcast, and then there's an ad for Zeman RV parks. Just go to the website and you can find wherever they are. They're top of the line. You won't find it anywhere else. They're like, oh, that sounds cool. And then on their way, if there's a Zeman RV park, then they're like, oh, that's the one they were talking about on the podcast that has this, and this about it. So it would raise awareness. It would create they would understand the value proposition, and it's content marketing. Like I went over in the webinar. So, they're coming because they're like, I want to know cool drives I can do in my RV. And then because you're giving that to them for free, they're like, all right, I'm going to listen to the ads that come up on this podcast that are promoting Zeman RV parks. And then, so that's just a kind of organic way to advertise what you're doing by creating content.
I understand. And I do have a friend that has a podcast, and it's heavily listened to. And I am going to say, all right, he's going to read his little blurb. I'm going to try it for a couple of months and on his show. And just, cool. If you call and you show up, you get a gift bag.
Yeah.
Plug in the name. Now we need to do a discount. We haven't figured all that out yet, but I get that. That's an experiment. And we're just going to try it. I frankly don't know if it's going to work. But what you're talking about is a little more content, and I go, okay. Now with you specifically, I say, all right, well, let's say I do this, and I say, all right, I'm going to give you $1,000 a month, but I'll tell you what, I'll give you X% of the revenue. Okay, well, now that's a little different. Where, all right, and you know what, I want a 3-year contract, so this may take some traction, and go, all right, well, you'd have to do the math on it. My rates are pretty high at that specific location. And my argument would be, all right, $1,000 a month. Okay, well, it keeps his lights on and he can eat and he can do this work and whatever. And I got a contract that's going to cost me 3 years. Okay. And he gets 10% of the revenue he brings in.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a little more. Now you got skin in the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're interested in that, because otherwise I'm like, well, shit, at $2,000 a month, I may get 0 customers. So again, that's something you may want to think about, whether it's me or Langdon or Ray-Ban or whatever, that you get that kicker. So you keep your lights on, you got some upfront costs, but your profit is all going for it. Again, Chris, I don't know. I'd have to think that through as far as, again, we're not fully ready. And that's on this particular business venture. I feel like I'm going to be, and I have some things in the works that I'm really excited about. And but I have to get some kinks worked out on my latest version. As I told you, I was in the RV business, and I can't really talk too much about it now, but there's some interesting things going on. So
yeah, and obviously that was just an example.
Sure, I understand.
This wasn't a ploy to sell you or anything.
I know, and I'm just sort of giving you my perspective so you can see where my hot spots are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, well, it's not that I'm cheap; it's that. To manage it. And are you making my life that easy? Because I don't know if I'm talented enough to sit there and talk about it. But if you say, hey, I'm doing everything or XYZ customer, I'm going to make your life easy. I'm going to do all this, and I'm going to try to get, blank 1,000 downloads. I'll handle everything. I mean, obviously I'm different than maybe a Langdon or a Ray-Ban who wants to talk and you be in the background. But me, I'm like, geez, I don't know how to interview anybody. I can't do it. I don't know how to find these people. I don't even know. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to do this. I'm not a media guy. I mean, it's the great news is I can tell you, I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, that's the great news. Is I love being naive in new business. I can ask all these dumb questions and say, well, why can't you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you just give me a flat fee and give me a bonus?
Yeah.
Why can't you?
Right.
Sorry, I don't mean to go off and keep pounding on that, but
no, I love that. I am open to that type of thing. I think that could be more effective, because I find that a lot of clients, they're like, I'm cool paying you $2-3K a month, but I don't want to pay any more than that. I'm like, well, we'll be steady. We'll get your like baseline goals, but like, if you want to take this to the next level, if you want to be in like the top 5% of podcasts within your niche, like, there are other things that can help us get there. So, when I'm kind of tying the performance of the podcast to some sort of bonus, then it's like, all right, cool. Like they also have skin in the game. They're not just bare.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And again, for me and entrepreneurs, I think we get that. We get that. And you can tell them flat out, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't really give a shit about your $2,000 a month. And you can tell them that. I don't give a shit about your $2,000 a month. I care about being top 5%, and I want to be such a huge success. You're going to love to write that check for $100,000 to me. You're gonna jump up and down and be so excited. You're going to dance that check for $100,000 over to me because you're going to be top 5.
Yeah.
Wow, Chris. You know what? I don't care about your $2,000. Give me that to keep my lights on and pay my people. But I want the $100,000 check, and I want you to dance it over to me and so happy. You're going to be thrilled. Wow. Yeah. That, talk about a differentiation for you. That's something that nobody's got the guts to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guarantee your Spotify guy at $50,000 would never do that.
Oh, yeah.
He just wants to sit back and God bless him. I'm not knocking the guy. He wants to sit back on his laurels and, well, it's Spotify and I know everything about it. Well, that's fine and dandy. So you mean to tell me you get paid no matter what if he gets true listeners? Yeah, but I know the algorithm. I don't give a shit if you know the algorithm. Tell me what it's going to mean for downloads and what percentage I'm going to be. That's what I want to
know. Yeah. That's awesome. These are great insights. There's so much actionable stuff here, Ed. I love it. Cool. And then, what are your thoughts on kind of my, medium to long-term goals as far as diverting, nearly all the profit to creative pursuits? I know that's certainly not traditional.
Well, Chris, I guess sort of my point, again, not being a media guy and being more and more and more turned up by the media every day, all sorts of media. I want to talk to people I know and trust, right? Mm-hmm. That's sort of my point. So when you talk about your media, and I'm going to be blunt, I don't care. That's like saying, hey, I want to make a bunch of money in the RV business so I can go and build model ships in a glass bottle. What do you care? Meaning, I wouldn't even mention that. Hey, I want to be successful to you, Ed Zeman, you, Gary Rabin, and you, Netflix guy, and don't even bring that up. What you do with your money and on your own time is what you want to do. And I think it's great, by the way. I think it's cool that you have passion. And I think it's wonderful you talk about it. But no offense, I don't care. Gary Rabin and Netflix guy doesn't care. And I'm not being mean to you. I'm just saying they don't care. So I would strike that out of your complete presentation and say, oh, by the way, as a hobby, I do these cool things, which also bleeds back into how I can help you. So I would, if you do bring it up, say, I do these network and I have all these cool creative people that I get ideas from the outside and bring it back to your podcast. But as far as taking all your profits, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to be saying I don't care about your passions. I'm saying in this particular case, I don't think it moves the needle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. My thought was like, okay, maybe this differentiates us. It's like, oh, cool. I want to support the people that are doing something because it funds a larger pursuit.
Yeah, but Chris, that's like me saying I'm going to use all my profits to either support Greenpeace, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or the Sierra Club. I mean, some people may get turned off by that. So my argument is unless Ed Zeman says, man, I really love TVs and movie and production. Oh, you know what I do in my hobby is this. But until you sort of vet that and know the customer, a guy like Ed Zeman and Gary Rabin, kind of like, all right, cool, dude, you're into production companies. I'm into model ships and airplane in glass bottles. You know what I mean? Unless it means something to somebody, I don't know if it's my passion for Greenpeace means anything to you, or it does or doesn't until I get to know you. And I'm just using Greenpeace as an example. It may turn some people off. Oh, those Greenpeace tree huggers, I hate them. So I'm not saying that being a media company is going to turn somebody off. I'm saying keep it focused on solving their problems, not your passions. And to the extent that it helps your interest and your creative mind helps feed their goals. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's kind of my thought is, hey, and by the way, we have now. And then my other thing is it could work against you. Wait a minute. This guy's more interested in production and writing movie and directing than he is on my podcast. So that's the other thing that is if you keep them separated for now anyway, maybe down the road you can sort of merge them and go, man, we just did Blair Witch Project, which I know was a kind of a film that was filmed by a local guy that was a huge. By the way, we did that. That's how smart I am. But until you get that, raging success, it's more of a hobby, right?
Yeah.
So I don't mean to knock your sort of thing, but that's just sort of my perspective from the outside.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate that. So, you are a business owner. I would categorize you in our target market of potential clients. Can you think off the top of your head, like, has anyone ever cold messaged you, a networking event, connected with you, been referred to you? Like how have people found you to convince you to use their services in the past? Any?
Yeah. And again, everybody's different, Chris. Everybody's different. I'll just tell you a couple of examples in the last 2 months. I get a lot of cold calls on LinkedIn. First of all, I accept everybody's LinkedIn. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but I just do, just because I figure, what the heck, why not? It doesn't affect me. Facebook, I'm much more, don't go on much anymore. I'm much more strict on who I accept. In fact, I kind of have to know you to accept you. So I get a lot of cold calls on LinkedIn, and I kind of either say, hey, I either ignore them, or, hey, I'm not interested. I did get a LinkedIn who said, hey, I see you're friends with so-and-so. I want to talk to you about real estate tax savings. And she was very nice and whatever. And I ignored her once. And then she did it again. Hey, you know what? We share this and this in common. So having that common shared thing is important. But just a straight up cold call. Now, occasionally, if it's really compelling, if I get a cold email, I just tend to get really turned off just by straight up cold ones. But when I get, hey, I know Chris, or I know Gary, or I know Joe. You ask me if you know Joe. Yeah, I know who he is. He does that. Yeah, okay, cool. Oh, so that networking of getting around those groups of people is just huge. I can't say enough that if I want to do a podcast, I'm going to Chris. I mean, that's just because I know you, and that's the thing too about the networking. So I actually went to an event. Florida's wide open, so as far as COVID goes, and I went to an event, and some young man, he was in college, and he said, I'm in the website building business, and he was, of course, I'm respectful and encouraging. Hey, what do you do? What do you do that's better than anybody else? And I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying that. I'm trying to be helpful and say, there's a million people out there that build websites, and what do you do that nobody else does? Oh, well, you know what I do? I'll look at your website, and I thought it was brilliant. He goes, I'm going to take a look at your website for free and tell you everything wrong with it. Take it or leave it. And you know what? If you like what I had to say, I could start fixing onesie twosies, and I'm not that expensive because I'm young and I'm trying to make a name for myself, and I'd really like to have you as a client because I think you're doing a great job, and I know I'm probably cheaper than I should be charging, but I can really do a wonderful job for you. I'm like, man, kid, you're a smart young fella. And he goes, I know I'm doing this for free and giving away a lot of money, but I'm in a dorm room right now. I'm working at college with my part-time job. I want to get some experience. I'd really love to be your guy. Wow, what a great pitch! And I met him face to face. So I got a name with the face, and that's powerful. That's very powerful, is that face to face thing. And again, I know COVID kind of chops that out, but those warm introductions, face to face success stories is another big one. All right, young man, who'd you do this for? Well, I did it for Susie's Cupcakes and Johnny's Landscaping, and look what I did for them. They loved me. Wow, let me talk to Susie Cupcake and Johnny Landscaping and hear what they have to say. So that to me, those personal introductions in the age of just being blitzed with spam on the email and things. I'm not saying you're not going to get some here and there, but boy, that's just me. I get bombarded with that stuff. It's like the old days of snail mail, probably before your time, where I used to get tons and tons of cold letters. And I wouldn't even open them and put them right in the garbage, no matter how compelling they were. And even if they're honest, I still I don't know, you sent me a letter. So we personalize. We still do, believe it or not, because my business is old school, we still do personalized hand-addressed letter, which nobody does anymore. Talk about a differentiation. In the age of digital marketing, is a handwritten letter. Wow. wow, that is, people go, I've never seen this in 20 years. So it's interesting that those are some of the tricks that we've used for customers that we like. And then when people bring me information, I have consultants that we work with. They pick up the phone. Hey, Ed, did you hear about so-and-so in the industry? No, I didn't. Wow, thanks for talking to me about that. And they stay in front of me just by giving me information for free, or hey, or shoot me an email. Hey, did you hear about this transaction that went down? You know, even if I had already heard it, hey, thanks a lot, you know, Bob, for telling me that. I appreciate it. How you doing? You know, what's going on? What else have you heard? Oh yeah, this, that, whatever. Okay, hey, let's get together when I'm in Chicago again. Great. So those one-on-ones, I think in this COVID and some of the internet things, that people really miss the one-on-one. And again, I know it's hard to do and almost impossible, but I wouldn't lose sight of those interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And interactions with quality people too. So, by the way, have you checked into EO? Not YPO, but EO?
No.
You may want to do that, because I think EO has a lower threshold, and they also they used to, I'm not sure if they do, have an EO Kickstarter, and a lot of guys, there's some really, really cool people in EO that eventually graduate in YPO, and then in fact some people love EO so much they could go to YPO but stay there. So there's a bunch of really cool young men and women in EO Chicago. I know it's very vibrant. I know a lot of guys that were in it that love it.
Yeah.
They're really cool guys. So that may be a place to look into. And I'm not sure where the threshold is on that. So
cool. Yeah. No, thank you. I have briefly heard of them, but it never clicked to actually look into that. So thank you for that suggestion. Awesome. So you touched on it a little bit. Handwritten letters. I wrote that down. I'm going to do that.
Okay.
Do you personally, your sales team, your marketing department, have you all, obviously your target customers are different than mine, but have you noticed some tricks to getting their attention, to building goodwill, to building trust, to getting more sales?
Yeah, our main internal marketing guy is really, really talented at getting to know the person. And, if they're into NASCAR and they're into, I'm not into NASCAR. Is it Bubba Wallace or whoever the guy is? I don't even know who the big NASCAR guys. Hey, I see Bubba Wallace came in third place at the Daytona or whatever it is. Whatever. Wow, you remembered I like Daytona, or you remembered I had 4 kids. You remembered my son was into whatever he's into. So those little things to go to separate yourself. And again, the good thing is, if you like somebody and you want to work with them, you want to remember this stuff. You want to be their friend and be that guy. And, there's nothing bad about knowing that, hey, you got 4 kids, Ed, or whatever it is, or you like Bubba Wallace or whatever that is. So those are the little things that kind of separate yourself, as opposed to, can I have your business? Want to do a podcast? Give me your business. It's like, geez, really? And somebody else told me something that I didn't really understand it clear enough when I was a young man. People buy from who they like. And I always thought it was only price. Well, that's a bunch of shit. People are going to go shop around and pick the lowest price. But if they like you and they trust you, and you can be a little unique and a little different and a little quirky, and as long as they like you, all things are the same. Now there's companies out there that just strictly grind you to price. And I always say, well, that may not be my customer. If they're just going to grind me to death on price, and all they talk about is price, and all they want to do is grind me all day long. Some companies are like that. God bless them, and they're successful. But, that's something you have to make your mind up. If that jives with you, and being the price guy as opposed to the relationship, and I'm going to solve your problem kind of thing. So those are some tricks we've used. It's worked out and against. A lot of times people just don't give a shit and they want the lowest price, because they got to go tell their boss, my marketing budget is this and I got this to spend. So that's just the way it is. So
that personal connection, that caring for the person, like noticing what they're interested in, talking about their family.
Yeah, and you got a great start, Chris. I mean, you're friends with Gary, you're friends with Joe, you're friends with Ed Zeman. I'm not saying that we're these wonderful guys, but you have some connections started.
You are a wonderful guy.
Oh yeah, I know Quentin. Quentin knows a lot of people. Oh yeah, I know this guy. Oh yeah, I know. Wow, that you use them? Yeah, I do all True Mentor stuff. Really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So maybe even Gary lets you on his podcast. This podcast was done by Suit Social. If you're looking for an awesome podcast, if you enjoyed this, call me. I can do it for you and do a wonderful job like this. Tell Gary you want to start doing that. Mm-hmm. I'm throwing ideas out here to you to kind of get creative. And what does Gary care? At the end, you do a little plug for yourself. Uh-huh. Come on, Gary, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm trying to grow my business. Let me do a 15-second plug on myself. Wow, that's a great Gary. Or Gary can say something on his. You know what? Chris has been with me for, what is it now, 2-3 years? I don't even know. Something like that.
Yeah, coming up on 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I've been with me for 3 years. I really love him. You're looking for a podcast. Go call my guy, Chris. He's awesome. 15 seconds. Boy, that's worth, to me, that 15 seconds Gary Raven was at the end of True Mentors. I'm sorry. Ditch Diggers is worth 1 million cold calls on LinkedIn. 1 million. I would rather have that 15 seconds than 1 million LinkedIn emails. I'm not kidding you. I would personally. I'm like, wow, Gary Rabine plugged this guy? He must be awesome. And I've been listening to this podcast for 3 years. This is awesome.
Yeah. Huh. That's awesome. Cool, Ed. Well, I know you're a busy man, and I super appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. It definitely got all my creative ideas and juices flowing. So, thank you.
Can I give my final disclaimer?
Absolutely.
The thing that Quentin and I always use, that my personal experience is my experience. And I certainly don't mean to offend anybody or to tell anybody what to do, or it's my way or the highway. I say, Chris, or anybody that listened, if you like it, use it. If you don't, throw it in the garbage. I don't expect you to do everything I said. And I just like to throw ideas, and also that may lead to another idea. So it's always great to talk to you, and I appreciate it. And of course, anytime I can help you, please let me know. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I just, want to let you know how much I appreciate it. Like you were awesome for the webinar. You really helped me believe in that. You were super positive and enthusiastic, and gave both, helpful advice, constructive advice, and just encouragement. And, that was super, super helpful. And I just appreciate that, more than words can express, my friend.
Great, buddy. Anytime, I'm always here for you, okay?
Yeah, awesome.
Nice chatting with you. Please let me know when you get this done. I'd love to see it, okay?
Yeah. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm trying to crank these out.
Great. Excellent. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Ed.